Well, hey there, everyone. Welcome on into VG Emporium, video game music and more. I'm your host, Rage Cage, and today I have with me another guest. It is St. John of Des Moines of Nerd Noise Radio Podcast, and we're here to talk about some, as you probably could tell, some Sega Genesis goodie sounds. So, John, let you introduce yourself and tell us what brings you into the shop today.
Yes, well, so this is St. John from Des Moines. I'm the host of Nerd Noise Radio Channel 1. I'm one of the hosts of Nerd Noise Radio Channel 2, along with Hugh Johnson from Retro Game Club. And what we're doing today, so we actually have been talking for a while. Rage Cage guested on Nerd Noise Radio twice this year, and so we have been talking for a while about returning the favor, having me on his show. And we're both chip geeks, and we're both really big fans of the Sega Genesis in particular. And so we were planning this thing, like, let's put together this big collection that really kind of shows off the magic and the nuance of this system. And the list just got way too long for the format of VG Emporium, and so we actually have punted that back to 2024, and it'll actually be a Nerd Noise Radio thing. But we thought, hey, let's still do the VG Emporium episode. Let's still do some magic with Sega Genesis. And so what AJ had suggested is let's pick a few tracks that we think really represent the system well, really kind of show that Sega Genesis magic, and we'll just make an episode out of it. So yeah, that's the idea tonight.
Yeah, my thinking behind it was just like picking tracks that we really like from the Sega Genesis, but like you said, showcase what it's capable of, and not just those tinny sounds and flarpy stuff and chwarps, as the ex-VGM boys like to say.
Yes.
Kind of, gemsy stuff, though I am preparing to do a Gems Jams 2 episode showing off, really good versions of, like, really good songs made with the Gems sound engine. But for the majority of Gem stuff, it's not that great. So we're here to showcase stuff that is made really well with this, like made by composers that know how to work with the sound chip, or, programmers working with those composers, and just making it sound wonderful as it sings. And then also, I'd like to note that all the songs you're going to be hearing are recorded off my Mega Blaster 2, which I featured the last time on the Gems Jams episode 1 back way back, like episode 3, I think it was. Yeah, so it's going to have that little bit of extra crunchiness, that little bit of distortion in there with the FM and the samples. And, maybe it might not be that noticeable for some, but, for those that are really, into hearing that, really catches that stuff, there it is for you. A special treat.
It's as pure Model 1 Genesis as you can get without a pure Model 1 Genesis.
Basically.
Yeah, because it's using an actual honest-to-God YM2612 and an SN7649. That was the thing that jumped out at me. When you showed me that little thing and I saw those chips on there, I'm like, my God, this is real deal. And I'd asked you, how do you think they source those? Because there's no ways that Yamaha could still be making 2612s in 2023.
Yeah, my thinking is that they're just still bulk available out there, not saying all of them are used. So somebody was probably able to get a hold of a cache of them or something like that. And then maybe even from salvaging from consoles that just can't be saved, but those sound chips were still okay. That's, I said, those are my guessings. I mean, when I was in Japan, there was this little shop in Akihabara, little tiny hole of a place that had these little vending machines, capsule machines, probably 9 of them. And they all had sound chips in them of different types. So it's they're out there. They're just just got to find them.
That's so amazing to me. A sound chip vending machine. Listeners, wrap your head around that. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and the cool thing about that shop was the guy that ran it created this thing called Rebirth. So if anybody here is familiar with Gimmick, which is the multi-sound chip, playback thing that works with Neko Project 2.
Okay.
Rebirth is like that, except it's modular, so you could actually switch out the sound chips. He specially fits them with this thing to be able to fit into this board, and you can just switch them out and have all these things. I don't know. I imagine he's still doing it, but I don't know if some module chip things are still available or not. I've kind of looked at it for a while, but yeah, there's things like that out there, and it's crazy.
That's super cool.
Yeah. So, John, what can you tell me about this here song that we opened up with?
Okay, all right. So to get into my Channel 1 smooth radio affect, you were listening to Ancient Temple from Wolfchild on the Sega Genesis, composed by Martin Iveson and arranged by Matt Furniss, driver by Sean Hollingsworth. This game was so important to me. We got the Sega Genesis. So to take one step backwards, we actually entered the 16-bit war. We entered the 16-bit generation through the Super Nintendo. We got it Christmas 1992. And then just some random day in September of 93, one of my friends said their neighbor was selling a Genesis and for $50, and my parents just happened to have the money, and so they bought it for us. And
nice.
We went to there's a chain of stores. I think, well, they don't exist anymore, but I think they were local specifically to the greater Des Moines area. At most, they were regional. I'm sure they weren't national, but there was a chain of video rental stores called Movies to Go. And then inside the store, they had this cordoned off area specifically for video games, and that was called Games to Go. And so we went to Games. Yeah, it's pretty clever. We went to Games to Go and just bought 6 or 7 Genesis games. And this might have been in that first round.
Dang.
If not, it was very soon after. But this was an early entree into the Sega Genesis for me. And what an amazing soundtrack. Matt Furniss is one of my favorite. I mean, I know this is a Martin Iveson composition, and Martin's one of my favorite composers as well. And certainly we have to give probably just about as much credit to Sean Hollingsworth for that, because it's Sean's driver that Matt's using. But between the two of them, they've made some of the best sounds on the system, in my opinion.
No argument there. But yeah, I have not played this game. I am vaguely familiar with the soundtrack by hearing it on other podcasts, the Amiga version and some of the Genesis. So, when I first listened to this through the Mega Blaster, I was like, oh yeah, classic Furniss goodness right here.
Yep, the fiery Furniss.
Yes. Oh god.
So hey, in the very first season of my show, I did a Matt Furniss focus, and that's what the episode was called. So, but no, one thing that's really neat about this, if you listen to the little guitar solo kind of thing, the way that note rings out, that solo, the way that rings out.
Yeah.
There is so much detail in the decay of that guitar solo note. And see, with the Super Nintendo, the difference between the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis is Super Nintendo is making sound with Legos, whereas the Sega Genesis is making sounds with Play-Doh, And so there's it's maybe
I gotcha.
maybe the Super Nintendo can go more places, but it's going to do it in a wooden way. Yeah, you can pitch shift, you can chop up the sound file, but you can't have that kind of mutability unless it's baked into the original sound file, right? You know, with the Sega Genesis, all you're doing is just adversarially pitting sine waves against each other with an algorithm, and you can start to draw some of those sine waves out.
And then depending on how the patch is made, you can make it like evolve just with one note, like just like with how you set up the attack and the decays and the, you know, all the ADSR stuff. And there's even like the SSG EG function, which adds like a kind of like a semi LFO function to the you know, operators. And so just all these crazy things, like if you really know what you're doing, you can just make amazing just sounds with the simple 4-operator FM synthesis sound chip.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Well, I think, you know, and I think you can make a case either way for which system has the better sound system, but I think it's very telling that here in 2023, for every one guy you've got making fan music on Super Nintendo, you probably got 6 doing it on Genesis. You know what I mean?
I'm one of them.
Yeah, right. I mean, you know, I think that's a pretty telling thing that this particular system is so much more ubiquitous in the fan scene than the other.
Though, from like I could say from my side, like as a chiptunist, the Sega Genesis, like, you know, there's more of that music because there's more software openly available for it, like with VGM Music Maker back in like the 2010s, and then Deflamask, and then ultimately Furniss Tracker, which you know, has multiple sound chips on it, and then just recently added SNES, but you can't export it. Though somebody's creating a converter so you could take a Furniss Tracker module and turn it into a .spc. But there are ways to make, you know, SNES music. There's like, you know, weird little esoteric things, MML. I think there's SNES GSS, I think it's called. You can do it through OpenMPT, which is a you know, tracker program, which then there's a converter for that. Or there's a VST called C700, which you can open up in any DAW, and then you drop in like a little bin file, and it makes it able to actually export .spc, and it's one of the more authentic ways to do it. You got to keep it under that 64 kilobyte if you want it SPC, or you can export it as a ROM. And yeah, but it's just the more readily available way is, you know, Sega Genesis is more easier and readily available to do it without having to do a lot of finagling.
Well, and
there you go.
Can't you actually do Super Nintendo music in Deflamask? I thought I heard that you could.
No, you're thinking Furniss Tracker. Deflamask, the only sample capabilities it has is with the Sega Arcade module, which is the YM2151, and the Sega PCM, or the Neo Geo module using the YM2610. Though those are pretty limited what they can do. So, and there's some, you know, kind of controversies there with how they're limited compared to, you know, how they actually should be functioning. But that's a whole other thing I'm not ready to get into. Instead, what I'm going to get into is our next track. And this is one that you said you hadn't listened to, and I think you're going to really like it. So this is Battle Theme 3 from Dragon Ball Z Buyu Restsuden, and it's composed by Shinji Amagishi and or Hideyuki Ashizawa, Yoko Mizuta, or Sukezo Oya. welcome back. That was Battle Theme 3 from Dragon Ball Z Buyu Restsuden, either composed by Shinji Amagishi, Hideyuki Ashizawa, Yoko Mizuta, and or Sukezo Oyama.
It's
And
it's a jam.
what'd you think
it's
of this
a jam.
one?
And we were during the break, we were both kind of making this little hand gesture into the camera when we got the little twinkly PSG, the little square waves. Yeah.
Yeah. No, this one I've been listening to for probably close to 10 years now, and it's one of my favorite soundtracks that I found, like, for the Sega Genesis that we never got here. I think it was only released in Japan, and I want to say, like, PAL regions, mostly France, because there is a French title, so it's one of those ones that they only got there. But it's basically just, if you're familiar with, like, Dragon Ball Z, what was it called? Those Super Nintendo fighting games. Yeah. I can't, for the life of me, I can't remember what they are right now. I hope you folks are ready because it's time for an addendum! Hey there, AJ from the future past. Future because I'm recording this after the recording was done here, but from the past because by the time you're listening to this, it'd be recorded in the past. But anyway, the title I was looking for was Dragon Ball Z Super Botoden, and then there's also Dragon Ball Z Hyper Dimension. Addendum over, back to the show. But it's basically that. I'm going to understand just a little slower, maybe not as, kinetic. I think it was considered a pretty good game, but the soundtrack, like I said, is pretty dang good. And everything, it's all FM too, so no samples used here. All the percussion is FM. And then, like I said, just very light PSG use, just that little bit and that twinkly bits.
Well, so I had presumed that was actual SN7649 PSG, but I know that 2612 can actually really convincingly fake a square wave with two sine waves.
Yeah, looking at the channel breakdowns, it was just the PSG.
Okay. Yeah, I figured it was, because usually there's just a tiny bit of a sound difference between them, and that sounded PSG to me. Okay, but I'm glad to hear that it wasn't just in my imagination.
Definitely FM PSG combo. Like I said, it's maybe not as strong as Furniss's thing, but still pretty good.
No, this is so fresh, and that's another thing that draws me more Genesis of Center and my personal leanings, because everything is, this is not bash the Super NES time. I love the Super NES. We were just, I told you before we started recording that, like, 20 minutes before we started recording, I put the bow on our end of year retrospective on Nerd Noise Radio Channel 2, and I will spoil one track. It features Fishing for Sima from Tsuri Taro on the Super Famicom, and that is one of my favorite pieces of video game music, period.
Okay.
Like, imagine like a theoretical top 50 pieces of video game music, and it's on that list somewhere for sure. And it's doing things that would not really be doable on the Genesis. So
yeah.
whenever I talk about a comparative between Genesis and Super Nintendo, and I'm speaking favorably of the Genesis, it's not meant to trash the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
The Super Nintendo is amazing and does amazing things, right? Like, the only way to be right is to have both. And both, and soak in and enjoy both, right? But that said, earlier I compared the two to Legos versus Play-Doh, but there's also, on the Genesis, it's raw synthesis. Like, this is actually being made on the chip, right? These sounds are being baked on the chip. It's a live concert.
Yeah, it's all data, like program data and registers and everything, and it's just telling it, okay, make these sounds in this way, and it's like just actively. So it's like, say somebody's playing with like six keyboards at once, basically.
Yeah, but it's a live concert, whereas the Super Nintendo is kind of like a tape recording.
That's the way it... I have one personal note about this soundtrack, though, is that a guilty pleasure of mine is Dragon Ball Z, like Dragon Ball Z. Like, I was watching Dragon Ball Super as it was coming out, and even went to go see the movies Dragon Ball Super Broly and Superhero, both in theaters. And even before that was keeping up with DBZ Abridged by Team 4-Star. As it was coming out, I watched Masako X's channel, who did the voice of TFS Goku, and he does like his what ifs. And one of my guiltiest things I feel like I was doing was reading fanfics, but not, I was finding like really, really good ones. Like there was one called Break Through the Limit, which was about Raditz, like his redemption and becoming a main character, and just the crazy stuff that happened with that story was, And so it kind of got me in this mode of like, creating fan stories in my head. Like, I never wrote them down or put it anywhere, but it just kind of came up with these stories and like, far future like kind of character, if you want to say OC type things, but also recurring characters. And I'd have this soundtrack like as a hypothetical soundtrack to a game featuring these characters from this headcanon I've created of my own. And like, I signed them to certain characters. I can't remember which ones because it's been a while since I've visited that place, but there you go. Embarrassing thing about me.
Well, okay, no. There doesn't have to be that doesn't have to be embarrassing. We exist in a scene where there are programmers, right? So we live in a world where you could theoretically realize that dream, but instead of maybe using this music, make your music.
Yeah, it's definitely not gonna happen. Yeah. So now we are getting into your next track here, and you got your pick. So I think I know which one you're gonna go with, possibly.
Well, I really think that there's two tracks that we really need to do back to back. So I'm actually going to surprise you and go with a different track. We're going to hear Moon from Streets of Rage 3 on the Sega Genesis, composed by Motohiro Kawashima. Okay, and that was Moon from Streets of Rage 3 on the Sega Genesis, composed by Motohiro Kawashima. God, I love this track, especially that ballsy, nuanced, grindy isn't the right word, but that really kind of gnarly, low instrument.
Like, the bass that you're talking about, like that kind of really low, really grumbly bass kind of going on in there.
Yeah, there's so much complexity to that sound.
I don't know, like we were talking over on the break, but it took a while to really appreciate this soundtrack for what it is, and it's like I was saying, it was like just an absolute triumph on this sound on these sound chips, and the things that Yuzo and Motohiro were able to do, and like, I don't know, it's just way too much.
Well, and I can't remember the name of the program, but this soundtrack is at least partially randomly generated. I mean, we live in a world of AI-generated stuff, and this is not quite the same as that, but you can almost think of this as presaging that by like 30 years.
No, it's more of like kind of like a generative randomization. Like I think when I did read about that, I think it was saying that this was almost like kind of like the first of its kind, like first time like somebody actually made a program that could do something like this.
Yes.
Like actively randomize notes and kind of create like this generative like beat stuff, and it was kind of like just before that stuff really started coming out in like software and hardware in the 90s.
And it went on. There are genres of dance music or electronic music, glitchy music, that are based on this, and it got its start here.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. And like I was saying, it took a while for this to grow on me because, listening to 1 and 2, those are just like amazing jams, like, really catchy melodies, like, really powerful stuff. And then, you get to 3 and it's like, what is this? What am I hearing? And then, like I said, took a while, like, listening to stuff like Aphex Twin and Venetian snares and a lot of like weird just electronic music. And then having a more kind of getting more an intimate knowledge of like how the FM synthesis works and the sound chip and making my own stuff. And then just coming to realize just how, like, this is probably like, maybe not the best soundtrack, but like just one of the most complex and powerful.
Well, Streets of Rage 1 and 2 soundtracks are far more accessible.
Yeah.
It's far easier to grab it and say, look at this magic. These are so weird. And what we're listening to is actually one of the least weird tracks in the soundtrack, right? Like, people who aren't familiar with the soundtrack are hearing this like, this is really wacky stuff, but this is actually the normal sounding stuff from the soundtrack. And so there's a real barrier to entry to the Streets of Rage 3 soundtrack because you really have to be open to really offbeat stuff. But in my experience, and sounds like your experience, and I've even heard the same thing from Brent Weinbach, is this really eventually becomes your favorite soundtrack of the 3.
I actually, earlier today at work, I decided to actually listen through it on BGM Rips, and just like, why that's why I'm able to say what I'm saying right now, because like, listening through it now, because it's been a while since I listened through it, and having like, that really kind of semi-fresh take on it is like, oh man, yeah. And then actually, the listener and fellow chiptunist, Crazy Goji, actually asked me years ago when we first kind of became aware of each other to beatbox Ingan Rasen, which is one of the tracks on this soundtrack, which is one of the more, one of the ones that is like, whoa, what am I listening to? Because it's like really repetitive. It's one of those ones that's kind of generative, like progressive generative. I don't know how to explain, but so I listened to it. It's like 6 minutes long before the loop. And so I had to, when I was figuring it out, I had to cut out some of the repetitive bits and reduce it down to 3 minutes. And that's what I beatboxed. I couldn't find the recording someplace, and I probably need to reshare it someplace, but it was a trip figuring how to do that, like, kind of get those repetitive bits, get all the weird sounds. And again, just kind of one of those moments that made me really appreciate like what was going on here.
And I think the thing that pushes this one over the top for me is not the experimentalness of the music itself, but knowing at least in basic terms what's happening with the tech behind it. Like Yuzo creates this program, and then this program generates all this music, and then Kawashima-san basically takes it and finesses it into the final product. To the best of my knowledge, there might be more, but to the best of my knowledge, the only kind of random music thing that happened in video games prior to this was Theme of the Grid from Ball Blazer. But riffology is very, very different than
wacky stuff. Though one thing I'll say about this particular track is that it made me think of, Streets of Rage 2 meets Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters on the Sega Genesis. Because like the way how that bass sounds, how these bassy sounds makes me think of that one, like, the Tournament Fighters. And then just like how the kind of progressiveness and the melodies and stuff of Streets of Rage. So it's just kind of...
There's so much going on here. It's unreal.
I don't know. I think we could probably just keep going on about this one, but I think I am going to bring in my next track here. And in a way kind of complements this because it's composed by somebody who usually does some really weird, wacky stuff that almost sounds like somebody's just throwing random together, but... this one is probably one of his more cohesive, listenable things here. So what we're going to listen to is Slap Up from Alien Soldier, composed by Norio Hanzawa. So that was Slap Up from Alien Soldier, composed by Norio Hanzawa. And that there is some treasure goodness right there, my oh my.
Okay, it slaps.
Literally.
Yes. No, I love, it's got a real spaciness to it.
Yeah, well, it is Alien Soldier, though, where this song plays, it's like when you're configuring, like, how your playstyle is, because if you played Gunstar Heroes, yeah, I'd imagine, yes?
1,000 times. And I've played just a little bit of Alien Soldier on, like, the Genesis collections.
Yeah, so you'd imagine, like, it's like that, except you get to choose your play mode that you can switch back and forth, and you get to choose choice of 6 different kind of shot types, which you can double up if you want. But, yeah, this music plays while you're doing that, and it's all just, like, black background, and you can kind of run around and try things out as it's happening and practice out and stuff, and it's perfect music for that. Before you get into that, the wild boss rush that is Alien Soldier with the soundtrack that is just completely, excuse my language, completely bonkers.
You know what? I don't get
and I'll be able to censor that.
I don't get to cuss on Nerd Noise Radio very much. It is bonkers.
Nice. And like I said, I have a censor for that, so it's a fun one too. So
I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, and have their own things. Because those are the big ones, and you'll get to hear them both right there. So that's good. But yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah. So Norio Hanzawa, he got started with Konami, so like games like Contra Hardcore and Sparkster and a few other games, like he was on there, and then he was part of that group that split off from Konami and started Treasure, and he was like one of the main composers. Like I want to say maybe he was like the lead composer for the Treasure sound team, and his style is just insane. Like his patches are really good, like really just like full and well made, and then just his composition style is just like first time hearing it just sounds like random stuff going on and like just noise, but then after you like kind of sit with it for a while, you're realizing just how like well put together his music is.
Yeah, well, I think the soundtrack for Alien Soldier is of akin to Gunstar Heroes. In fact, doesn't it borrow a few tracks directly from Gunstar Heroes?
Yeah, I think there's a couple moments where it does borrow from the I want to say it's
Seven Force, isn't it?
Yes, that's what it is. Seven Force, the one where like you're fighting like the fella like kind of like the traitor to your group, the green guy, and he has like the shape-shifting machine that goes through 7 different modes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I don't know where exactly that plays in Alien Soldier, but yeah, it was like when I first heard it, I was like, whoa, okay, cool.
Yeah. Well, I feel like Alien Soldier is soundtrack-wise is kind of Gunstar Heroes too. But I remember playing Gunstar Heroes for the first time in probably spring of '94. And just being so blown away by that game. I mean, it was fast, it was frenetic,
crazy,
it was cutesy, it was fun, but the music was probably the highlight for me, and still is.
No, I remember, like I didn't have a Genesis like when it came out, and I would have to play at friends' house, and my friend got this game, and I was like, whoa, what is this? Like, because I was used to playing Sonic 2 at his place, and then all of a sudden he has this new game, and it's like, whoa, like it's like craziness in that first boss, like that first mid-boss fight with like that cube guy, like it's almost like 3D looking, and the way how it moves and everything was like, what am I seeing? What am I playing? It's just so fast, so frenetic. Everything's blowing up. These guys are blowing up. You're just shooting stuff all over the place. Get the homing shot. Oh man,
it's the kind of thing that makes you want to shout Sega.
Yeah, it is. But it is because of the magical, wonderful team that is Treasure.
A treasure they are.
Oh man, getting back to this track though, is just that bass patch is just so good. It's like this really bouncy. It sounds like you guys actually hitting the strings, and you can
actually what it sounds like to me is a good foam mute. Because it's real staccato. It's real, boom, 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 boom. It doesn't ring out. It's like it dies immediately, which would be like taking a bass with flat wound strings or whatever and putting shoving a foam mute in it. You'll get that kind of sound. I'm a terrible bass player, but I do play bass, and so I'm not able to play anything. I know nothing about stringed instruments. Like you put one in my hand, I'm like, what happened? What do? I'm not good at any instrument, but I can play a little guitar and a little bass. I've collected way more than I should, and the thing that I realized recently. Well, okay, look, I play terribly. I play very little. I play very badly. I don't have a lot of discretionary income. And yet, between guitars and basses, I think I'm up to like 17 of them now.
Oh, geez.
And the thing that I realized recently, and I talk about this a lot on Nerd Noise Radio, I don't want to talk about it a lot here, but earlier this year I was diagnosed with autism and ADHD.
Yeah.
Something that's colloquially called ADHD when you have both of them. And what I realized is, why do I have so many guitars and basses if I am so poor or play so poorly and play so seldomly? And it's because guitars and basses are an autistic special interest. They're an end in of themselves.
Huh.
You know, like they're just kind of like they're not the thing I use to make music. They're the thing I have to have because they're an obsession in and of themselves. That's why it's why I can barely play a Gibson SG, but I can talk about a Gibson SG and the nuances of it for 20 minutes. Or, you know, pick your instrument, Fender jazz bass, whatever it is, right? You know, it's actually its own obsession for me. So, yeah. Well, so, but yeah, that bass sounds like something foam muted, you know, because you've got this great thump, but then it dies immediately. There's no real decay. But what I actually like even better are those chords that move in and out of each other.
Yeah.
You know, the solo's nice. That kind of meow solo is nice, but it's the chords that ring in and out of each other that gets me. That's the star of the track for me.
Yeah. Oh man. Again, it's just amazing patchwork and just amazing composition work by Norio Hanzawa. It's just, guy is immaculate.
Hanzawa-san wa saiko desu ne.
Weeb.
I cannot make actual conversation in Japanese. The most advanced thing I've ever said in Japanese translates to I'm an American, of course my English is bad.
Amagishi desu. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm really good with the phonetics. You know, you show me the words and I'll sit with it for a bit and I can say it really well. But then as far as like grammar and actually using it and stuff, I'm like, I mean, I think the thing I said most when I was in Japan was arigato gozaimasu. That was the most I've said. And I learned how to say it pretty good, you know, arigato gozaimasu. Yeah, it's just because, because, I'd go into stores and buy, food and stuff, and I just say that to the cashiers, and that's all I needed to do. For the most part, I kept it myself.
I think I know how to say, do you speak English in Japanese? Let's see. Ego ga hanamasu ka?
Hey, Lego my ego, Hanuman.
I swear I was just going to make that exact same joke. Man, great minds. Well, so speaking of which, are you ready to move on to our next track?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our next track is from a very mediocre game, but a phenomenal soundtrack. It's one of my favorite soundtracks of all time, in fact. I'll even go on the record to say that. What we are going to hear next is Cylic Heavily Armored from Cosmic Carnage on the 32X, composed by Hikoshi Hashimoto. sweet, sultry, seductive magic is compliments of Hikoshi Hashimoto. It is Cylic, heavily armored from Cosmic Carnage on the 32X. And in case anyone's thinking, 32X? Wait a minute, this is a Sega Genesis episode. Doesn't the 32X bring extra sound hardware and would be ineligible? Yes and no. The 32X does bring extra sound hardware, and you can hear it in music in games like Knuckles Chaotix with the kind of pan percussion and stuff. But from a sound design perspective, the Cosmic Carnage soundtrack is pure Genesis. It's the YM2612 and the SN76489 and nothing else.
All those samples coming from Channel 6, that DAC mode.
Yes, the DAC mode. Yeah.
DAC mode. Engage!
Yes. But this sound design, I mean, well, okay, I love the composition. But the sound design is amazing. That bass that's like just a little bit clipping, just a little bit too hot, you know? And then all these just interplaying little notes, you know, that are the little tinkling off of each other and stuff. And then you can barely hear the PSG, but it's there. It's
like just nice light chords, which is what I really like to hear sometimes. Is like, you know, FM is like, you know, front and center, but then you hear that PSG lightly in the background. You're like, oh, it gives you those good feelings.
Yeah, because it's so sing-songy. You know what I mean? It's perfect for like a background instrument. So the reason we were actually going to open with this track, but I have a story about this track, and we decided that we didn't want to let the intro get way too long, as can sometimes happen on Nerd Noise Radio Channel 2. That's mostly my fault. Yeah, but anyway, this track is the only piece of video game music, to the best of my recollection, that has appeared in a dream for me.
Whoa, okay.
And it's so wild. We got this game for Christmas of 1994. We got the 32X for Christmas of 1994, and this is one of the games we got with it. And I immediately, and well, you know what's fun? I still have, not only do I have 32X, I have that exact same 32X.
Oh, dang, okay, nice. There's so many consoles I still wish I had. My Sega Master System is the one regret I've lost. Like, in a move, I don't remember what happened to it, but that's, out of all the consoles I've had, that is my biggest regret. Sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, I just had to get that out there.
No, it's okay. Do you know the song from Intellivision Lives, I Want My Intellivision? It's about a guy who lost his Intellivision as a kid. His mom sold it in a garage sale.
Oh, man, no, I have not.
Like Michael Schwartz, I think, is the composer. Okay, after this, I'm going to send you a link. But what you need to do is you need to listen to that, and you need to bottle that dorky magic and make a piece lamenting the loss of your Master System in the spirit of I Want My Intellivision. I'll make it with
the YM2413 to boot. There we go.
There you go. There you go. Boom. And then yeah, you got to do it. No. The listeners have heard the suggestion. They're all committed. They're salivating over this thing. They're not going to let you forget about it. But anyway, so back to the story of the dream. Christmas 1994, we got the 32X, and I immediately appreciated the soundtrack, but I didn't immediately adore the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Okay? Like, it was really good, but it was okay. Well, now we fast forward all the way to the year 2003. And here's the dream. I'm in like this laboratory. It almost looks like one of the operating rooms from the show ER. You know, you've got the green tile with the black tile. You've got this big like window in the background with people in lab coats and chairs looking out at the room. You got people in lab coats milling about. There's no sound at this point except for the din of these guys moving about and doing their thing. They're not paying me any mind, right? But right in the middle of the room is like this sleek marble pedestal, okay? And this curvy vase-like marble pedestal, and on top of it is a CRT computer monitor. Big bulky CRT computer monitor, right? And you can see in the background, you can see from a distance that it's got like space scenes on it. 'Cause you know, like in Cosmic Carnage, the background are all these space scenes.
Only from screenshots. I have not played this one.
Okay, but you get the idea. Anyway, so it's those kind of space scenes on it, right? And it's like a slideshow, like it changes every few seconds. Well, I walk up to the computer, and as soon as I get in front of the monitor, this piece of music plays. And in addition to the space scenes that are just slide-showing, there's one little window, and it's like imagine a Windows 95 era installing bar, like the little tiny rectangle box with the progress bar, and it doesn't have any words on it. It's just this progress bar. It's kind of gradually working. The music sounds just like real life, except it's just a teeny bit slower. Like not PAL slow. Like so not like 50 hertz slow, like maybe 58 hertz or an imaginary 58 or 57 hertz. Just a tiny bit slower.
Just slight enough to be like, huh.
Well, what it did is it made it feel like each note had just a little bit extra hit, right? Okay. And this progress bar is and when I get to I forgot to mention this. When I get to the computer monitor, imagine like a presentation for like, I don't know, the new iPhone or the new Google Pixel or whatever. You see the PowerPoint on the wall behind the guy talking, and then the video feed switches from the guy talking with the PowerPoint behind him to a direct feed of the PowerPoint.
Okay.
So you got the idea? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in the dream, if we will, it goes from the feed of my eyes looking at the computer monitor to a direct feed of the computer monitor. So all I'm seeing is the space background in this progress bar, right? The exact second the progress bar finishes,
while this music's playing.
Yeah, while this music's playing. But the exact second the progress bar finishes, I wake up. And I wake up madly in love with the soundtrack. The very first thing I did when I got out of bed is I ran to the living room, fired up the 32X, put Cosmic Carnage in, put it in sound mode, put it on sound mode 05, which is this track, and heard it with brand new ears. And from that moment on, I have been the biggest fan of this soundtrack in general, and this track in particular. So it's now okay. My real belief on dreams is I don't like to read too much into dreams. Like I read a Psychology Today article that explained this, and it's basically your brain trying to file away data points while you're asleep, right? So it's looking for correlations. It's looking for where do I put this file? Does this file have anything to do with this file, right? It's basically a Windows 95 hard disk defrag, right? But when it doesn't know what to do with two files, like do these files correlate in any way? Let's find out. Run program. But then it's like a Star Trek The Next Generation holodeck, and that's the dream. The dream is the holodeck from the Windows 95 defrag, where it's trying to figure out if this file has any correlation with this file, right? And so it's just throwing these files at each other to see if there's a relation, and that's the weirdness of the dream. That's why you have all these things that you would never think to put together in the waking world, right? I don't believe...
That's why you get dreams... That's why you get dreams like, I'm walking up the side of my apartment complex and a car drives up and my cousins are in it with Raphael and like the cheap-looking costume-looking thing, like those big foam-looking ones that you see on posters and stuff.
Yes.
Get stuff like that. Or you're in Monterey, some kind of weird semblance of Monterey or Marina area here in California.
Okay.
You're walking along. I walk through a door. You go into this balcony, and there's people kind of just sitting there. A kid sitting on a stool looking over. And I look over, and this big gray mass just shoots up, and I back up, and there's a manatee just landing on the rail, looking at me. Let's go, flops back, and then just more manatees shooting up and just doing that and flopping back,
Yeah.
What does that make any sense? No? Okay. Just go about your day.
Well, I had a dream where Pee Wee Herman was a samurai warrior.
Ooh. Oh, damn. Ooh, I gotta tell that one to a couple of my buddies. They love Pee Wee, and they might be able to do something with that.
Oh, well, after we're done recording the episode, I can tell you the whole thing. But I don't want to go on too much longer with this. But the reason I mentioned that is that's my belief on dreams. It's basically a Windows 95 hard disk defrag with a Star Trek TNG holodeck. I don't read deeper into dreams than that. But the fact that you had this progress, the fact that you had this track that I only sort of liked it, right? But then it's in a dream with a progress bar installing something. And I wake the exact second the bar finishes, and I'm madly in love with the soundtrack. Even if I don't believe this objectively, I love to pretend that was my love for the Cosmic Carnage soundtrack installing. And when the installer was done, the program closed, and I woke up. I was madly in love with a track that I was not madly in love with the night before.
That is crazy.
And I am to this day. And I still am to this day.
Well, I have one that you may not have as much mad love for it, but we'll still love it. It's I don't know where I was going with that, but anyway, it is another Hikoshi Hashimoto track. This is Battle Theme 1 from Shura no Mon. that was Battle Theme 1 from Shura no Mon, composed by Hikoshi Hashimoto. And you start off with the chorus bass, I'm already sold. I love it when bass stuff happens with FM, like, whether it's chorused or it's like a very slight delay on it, kind of get like I don't know how to explain it, Keishi Onao's trick of doing the slight bass delay and stuff, like, all those things is like, if you want me to fall in love with a FM track, you just show me something that has that, and I'm like, okay, oh man, I love
this part that's
so
happening
much
right now, I think, is the highlight of the track. You've got those amazing chords, you've got all the little twinkly things over top, and
yeah, it's that classic Hashimoto kind of build up, triumphant, big blast of just like magic, and then right back into the loop.
Well, so prior to today, I had not heard of Shura no Mon, but earlier today, I went ahead, as I was looking at this list and trying to get prepared for tonight's episode, I ended up listening to the entire Shura no Mon soundtrack, and it's pretty short. There's not a lot there, but what it feels like to me is a prototype for Cosmic Carnage.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it. Yeah, what this game is what I've read about it, is a weird kind of fighting game, but it's not like, you're not like putting in commands to do the fights. Like, it's more of like how to explain it? It's like almost like an active time thing where you are putting in commands, but it's not like, like inputs, like, quarter circle punch or stuff like that. It's like you're putting in options, like you have a menu and you're choosing things to do, like to react to your opponents. I think it's kind of like a rock, paper, scissors thing. And it's almost like an RPG almost. I don't know. It's been a while since I read about it, but it's really interesting, and it's based off a manga, and I believe also an anime series. It might have been an anime, but it's like, I know it's based off a manga called Shura no Mon, and it's just like this one guy, kind of like it's just one guy, and he wants to just fight strong people, get better and better type thing.
The way you describe
classic shonen stuff.
Sure. The way you describe it, the mental image I'm getting, and I may be way off. You'll have to tell me afterwards. But what I'm envisioning is a menu system like Final Fantasy IV battle mode, with a timing mechanism, kind of like DDR, and then an overlay of the action, kind of like Street Fighter 2, and that's all happening at once.
Yeah. No. Well, how the action is shown is actually like, I don't know. Like, it's been a while since I've looked at it, but I know it's not like showing sprites doing stuff. It's more of like kind of like adventure games, like, how Japanese adventure games have like the scenes and stuff, and it shows the characters. It's kind of like that with some animations going on. It's really weird to explain, and I need to look at it again. But anyway,
well, I think I understand. Is it kind of like a primitive pseudo FMV kind of thing? It's not actual FMV, because there wouldn't be room in the ROM for that.
It's just all sprites, but it's something like that, I think. Okay. But getting back to this track, as you know, earlier this year we did Masters of EGM, and Hikoshi Hashimoto was one of my composers that I chose. As like they were kind of like obscure or lesser known or new and up and coming, so he was kind of like my more maybe not lesser known, but like kind of lesser appreciated. I don't know how to say that, but like, really getting into what he was doing is like, gave me this new appreciation, because I had listened to these soundtracks, Shura no Mon, Cosmic Carnage, even Racing Hero, I think it is, but really like getting into his stuff and like, hearing how his sound evolved, and like just how strong he started out with, like his first soundtrack being Racing Hero, and just the music in that is amazing, and like, you see the DNA for what would come for his later stuff, and just he's just a really really awesome composer, knows what he's doing. And as you could probably tell, like, with that Cylic track and then this track, he has that tendency to kind of do this really strong melodies, and then works to this build up that eventually, like, kind of crescendos up to, like either arpeggiations or, like a drum roll, like tom roll going down, and then just this big blast of like, just euphoric causing magic, and it's like, oh man. Yeah.
So I haven't heard Racing Hero, much to my discredit, but I had referred to Shura no Mon as sounding like a proto Cosmic Carnage, but you listen to Pat Riley Basketball, and it does not really sound like proto Cosmic Carnage. I was kind of like, I'm not hearing a lot of correlation between these two soundtracks, because Hikoshi Hashimoto was one of our VGM composers too.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and so if Cylic Heavy Armor is my number one favorite track from Cosmic Carnage, Xena Lan Heavy Armor is my second favorite, and we actually featured Xenolan heavy in our VGM. And one more spoiler. I'm not going to give away the farm here, but one more spoiler for our C2R3 Best of Season 3 retrospective. Xenolan might be making an appearance. We'll just say. So, yes. The question is, did I pick it? The question is, did I pick it or did Hugh pick it? Now I'm going to let you wait to listen to the episode for that.
Find out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cheeky boys.
Cheeky.
That is such a weird title for a game. What?
Well.
Oh man.
Yeah, I know. It's wonderfully weird. I mean.
Yeah.
And there's weirder. I mean, it's no Aicho Aniki.
No, dear no. Choniki. No. But
I love Aicho Aniki though.
I was gonna say if you want to know more about Choniki, there's a Retronauts episode about it. If you listen to that, and it's a blast to just learn about Choniki and just all the weird stuff, delightful stuff.
Oh, delightfully weird stuff. I know Aicho Aniki and pretty well in and out. I know that the later games get even weirder, and I think it was the PS2 one. I can't remember the Japanese name, but I think I remember it translating in English to like the quest for the holy protein or something.
Yeah, basically.
Okay. Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we're about to get into someplace that's not as ridiculous, a little bit more of a serious tone, with your last track here, I believe.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure where to put this one. So, the listeners probably know this from listening to you, but your show is really fun because you pick an opening track, and then the rest of the show is kind of like, let's wing it. Let's figure out, we've got our tracks, but we don't have our order. We're going to figure it out on the fly. And I have, in 7 years of podcasting, I've never done anything like this. Everything is pre-planned.
Oh, geez.
Well, no, I love it. This is a blast.
I know. This is quite a treat for you.
Yeah, but this is completely uncharted territory for me. So I didn't know where I was going to put this. This is probably of all the tracks, this is the one that probably fits the lineup the least because it chills out. I mean, it's not like ambient chill, but this is by far the mellowest track of the day, and it's our closer. Are you going to bring something after this, or is this how we say goodbye?
Nope, this is gonna be the end right here. Yeah.
Okay.
This is gonna be the close of the track, of the song, of the thing.
The thing. That's the scientific term for it.
The thing. Yes. The thing.
The thing.
Yes. I'm gonna use it to end the thing. That's the thing.
Okay. Well, the thing that's going to end the thing is Izayoi from Shinobi 3 on the Sega Genesis, composed by Masayuki Nagao. And that was Izayoi from Shinobi 3 on Sega Genesis, composed by Masayuki Nagao. I think this track is delightful.
Mm-hmm.
That was ridiculous. That was ridiculous.
Indubitably delightful and quite eloquent. No, I don't know. Jeez, I was trying to think of a fancy word, and that's the thing I kind of. But yes, no, this is.
No, that reminds me of a T-shirt I saw that says, "I like to use fancy words so people will think I'm more photosynthesis."
Oh, jeezy Weezers. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
man.
No,
But this is such a mighty track.
It is. And the part that's playing in the background right now is that real magic sauce where kind of, you were talking about with Hashimoto-san. He has this tendency to have this big, grand moment in the piece. And Nagao-san just did the same thing. And this is during. Have you played Shinobi 3 all the way through? Shinobi 3 all the way through.
I think so. It's been a long time. Like, it was one of the ones I actually did get to play on a Sega Genesis when I had one, and it's been so long I can't remember if I actually played it all the way through or not. But yeah, it's a great game all around. Just beautiful. Gameplay is tight. Soundtrack is just amazing all throughout. It's one of those perfect games.
It is. This game is easily I'm really bad at questions like, what's your favorite Sega Genesis game? Or what's your favorite this? Well, I've got a friend named Dave LeBlanc,
yeah.
and he will constantly do this to me. John, favorite Sega Genesis game? Go. And I always say the mental sensation I experience is like 500 people all trying to run through an ordinary bedroom door all at once. It's just like it creates physical pain from me. It's like my brain divides by zero trying to download the entire universe in one transaction. Is kind of what happens, right?
Yeah.
But I can tell you that even if I can't put together a list, every single time someone asks me favorite Genesis games, this game is one of the few that always comes up in my head. It's just magic. The music is amazing. The graphics are great. The physical mechanics of the gameplay are perfect. It's not a super long game. It does have I do love My Dear D, that kind of hideous monster that you see in the background of 3-2. And then you fight him in 3-3.
Yeah, and actually, that one got featured in the episode I did with Kung Fu Carlito called Kaiju Carlito, because that boss that you're fighting when that song plays is this giant bio waste monstrosity.
Well,
but yeah, it is a really good. That is an awesome.
So there's a person in the VGM podcast scene. They're not a podcaster, but they're very prominent in the scene as I guess a layperson. Their name is Deidre Porter. And they go by Pyness 64. They used to do a lot of VGM karaoke. They do a lot of art, and they did this amazing piece. They do a little bit of art, and they did this amazing piece on body dysmorphia.
Huh.
Okay. So you see the back of Deidre's head, and she's looking in the mirror, and looking back at her is D.
Oh, geez.
From 3-2, where he's in the background.
Oh, wow.
Just all teeth and eyes and everything.
Yeah.
And it was one part heartbreaking, one part hilarious, one part just amazingly poignant.
Yeah. Oh, man.
That piece of art.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'll never... Well, and I probably was not the person who introduced this concept to her, but I started referring to her as My Dear D. And like I said, I can't take credit for that taking off because I don't know if I was the reason that took off, but it took off. If you go look at her social media profiles, they'll usually say Pyness 64, My Dear D. And so I just love that whether I had anything to do with it or not, I love that it happened. But I'll never be able to think of Shinobi 3 without thinking of Deidre, is over the river and through the woods to the point I get. So I guess if you're listening, D, this is dedicated to you.
That dear D.
But this is not the scene where this is playing in this track is playing. This is towards the end of the game. It's not the last level. I think it's the second or third to last level. I think it's the third to last level. And you're in this maze of traps. And you've got all these doors you can go through. but the doors will take you back to earlier in the level unless you choose the just right combination.
Okay.
And everything is hazy and foggy, and it's kind of, a traditional Japanese structure, with the kind of thing with like the paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, the paper doors and all that stuff. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
It's a totally beautiful level. Probably my favorite part of the
I
game.
don't think I've actually gotten to that point then, so then I haven't beat the game. Because I don't remember that at all.
Okay. Well, do you remember the boss, the Kabuki guy? The Kabuki boss
God.
with he throws knives out of his hair?
No, I don't remember. Like I said, it's been so long since I've last played this. Even via emulation, I can't remember.
Okay, he's the boss of this level. That's why I
Okay.
asked. That would be our test if you've ever played this level. Because if you remembered him, then you would have, by necessity, had to play this level.
One thing I can say about this, well, not the level, but the song, is that point. Like that big point, towards the end of the song. I just have this memory of my friend Wade, who was my first guest on the show. And, he was talking about the song because, we listen. He's my BGM buddy. We get together. That's pretty much mostly what we'll talk about. And we eventually get talking about this song, and he mentions this one particular part that he loves and is actually coming up here pretty soon. But it's just a combination of the percussion, the progression, and actually here it starts right here. Oh, yeah, that right there. That's the good stuff. And that's why I brought it up, because every time I hear that part, I just think about that conversation. And it is really hard to deny that there's something magical about it.
It's the chords. It's the bum, 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 bum. That last one, bum, that's the magic. That's right there is the magic. And yeah, it just feels so big. God, I literally have goosebumps, guys.
Oh, no.
Again.
Oh, bumpy boy.
I am a
what
bumpy,
are you doing getting
boy.
all these bumps, you boy? I don't know.
Well, it's the fault of the music.
And good music it all is. And all with that extra little extra bit of authentic crunch in there for those of you that are able to add, for those of you that actually can hear that kind of stuff.
Yes, we're here. The way God designed, the way God intended it to be heard.
This is God's sound. How he designed, how he intended for it all to be heard. Not through some emulators, not through some hocus pocus. No, through the real God-given right of the sound chips of the YM7612 and the SM76409 by the Texas Instrument and Yamaha. I don't know where I'm going with that again.
Well, it definitely makes you feel like you're in a tent in the South.
Yes.
Well, hey, listen, I am what you I prefer the term post-religious, because you may someday stop being a believer, but you'll never stop being that one kid from youth group. But I think the more popular term is ex-evangelical.
Okay, yeah, I can get on that.
And being post-millennial ex-evangelical, I have memories of this stuff. So that all felt really familiar to me.
Oh, jeez. Go. I love getting into that sometimes because it's just so ridiculous and over the top. But yeah, well, Johnny, thank you for bringing this, for coming on and bringing these awesome tracks and helping me bring these on. And
yeah, so I'm actually sad that we don't have any more tracks.
Well, this is definitely not the end because, like you said, we're going to be 2024 Nerd Noise Radio. We're going to be having just a load. Like, the list is a little intimidating from what I've seen so far, and I think we're going to be adding more to it.
We're going to be adding
eventually.
more. Well, so as I said at the very beginning, this episode actually evolved from an idea where we wanted to focus on particular aspects of the Genesis sound, like real PSG versus fake PSG, or the ladder effect versus the not ladder, and so on, like really technical, really heady stuff, and
kind of get into stuff like I know,
and so So if you're into that kind of stuff, you're going to love that episode in 2024. If you're not into that kind of stuff, maybe that's one to skip. I don't know. No, don't skip it because we have a guest. We don't have guests very often on Nerd Noise Radio. So,
and hopefully it'll be educational, kind of give you an idea. Like, if you're not used to listening to FM music in general, like, not just Sega Genesis, but any FM sound chip or sound chiptune stuff, hopefully it'll kind of help you learn to discern, like, okay, that's making that sound. This is what's going on here. This is FM percussion. This is the sample percussion. This is,
We'll get into the minutia.
Fancy words.
I like to use fancy words I don't understand, so I sound more photosynthesis.
Oh, jeez. But yeah, again, thank you, John, for coming on. This is a great fun time, and I'm looking forward to coming on to your show and really getting to nerd out.
Well, I am
to some noise.
Yes, I was going to say nerd noise out. Yes, but I'm really glad to have had the chance to do this. It's so, you've been, figuratively speaking, in my house, and so now it's just so wonderful to get to be in yours. But not in that closet. That'd be really that'd violate all sorts of bubbles.
This is it's too big. It's too small for even to have my cat in here because he's gotten too big. I used to have him in here when he was a kitten, and now he's too big. He'll just walk all over thing and just, So it's too small, even for me. But it's perfect. But as you were saying though, when I was in your house, I don't know, maybe shout this out there. I imagine most folks that are listening know about this already, but maybe they don't. I guested on John's show as kind of like a guest host announcer for Channel 1, featuring my music that I made, my original chiptune. And then you featured me again as one of your masters of VGM, featuring my actual VGM that I made for some games that are still in the works. But so that was pretty cool. And again, thank you so much for doing that. It was really cool to kind of hear it in that context.
The pleasure was all mine, and they were good episodes, and they were well received, and so it was totally a pleasure.
Okay.
I suppose real quick, most people who are listening to VG Emporium at least have heard of Nerd Noise Radio. We can be found wherever podcasts are sold. We are on Spotify, but we're really deprioritizing Spotify because Spotify is getting into the habit of just kicking episodes off. My Channel 2 co-host, Hugh, really never does anything with Channel 1 except for once in a great while. And he did a Channel 1 episode, and it was magnificent. It was focused on covers, primarily OC Remix, but we went outside OC Remix. And it was a glorious episode, and it was on Spotify for all of an hour and a half before it got pulled off. And so I think that was kind of rough for him to have that, just, all that heart and soul go into it and just have it yanked. So we're on Spotify, but we're kind of just playing chicken with Spotify. How long can we go before they kick us off completely? So if you're looking for a way to follow us, don't follow us on Spotify. For now, Google Podcasts is the best way, but I know that's going away. That's going to move into YouTube Music. Apple Podcasts.
Are you on TerraPlayer yet?
No, I'm not. You'll have to tell me about that after we stop recording.
TerraPlayer, I mentioned it a few times, is a hub for not just VGM, but video game podcasts. And I'll send you the contact for the guy that is managing it. And it's a really cool resource. They're still working on their app. Right now it's just the radio stuff. But I'm hoping eventually they'll add the podcast portion to the app. But you can still go to the website and find all the podcasts and listen to the stuff there. And unlike Spotify or Apple Podcast or Google Music, I think it's not limiting it to 100 episodes because, since I've gotten over the 100 episode threshold, I'm noticing my earlier episodes are starting to disappear because they're only able to do 100.
You could always, all else fails, I'm on Podbean. You can find me on Podbean. Or you could find me on Archive, because I always put stuff on Archive. And since so few people listen on Archive, it's kind of turned into like an insider secret club. If only 5 to 20% of my listeners ever tune in on Archive, I can get away with all sorts of crazy horse shit over there, right? So I release episodes early. I also release stuff that's only available on Archive. For an example, back in 2020 when I did the April Fool's episode where it was all video game music played in reverse called Backtracks, there was 50 tracks in the episode. But I literally spent the 6 months before Backtracks auditioning like 300 pieces of backwards VGM, trying to figure out what I wanted. I know it was the most intensive project I've ever involved myself in, but on Archive, either between things called backtracks or between things called back to front, you can hear literally every piece of music I heard in reverse on Archive. So it's the drawback to Archive is you can't subscribe. You have to go looking for it. You know what I mean? But it has everything the podcast feed has. Usually has it early, and then has a crap ton of stuff that you can't find anywhere else. So you can find us there. The very last thing I'd want to shout out with my stuff is pretty soon I'm going to be starting a vlog on my adventures as a neurodivergent, my adventures as an autistic and ADHD person, and it's called ADHD. But it's not okay. So the condition ADHD, having both autism and ADHD, is spelled capital A, lowercase u, capital DHD. ADHD, my thing is capital O, lowercase DDIE, space capital HD. So it's like an obvious nod to ADHD, but it's also meant to convey like weirdo in high definition. So it's on all the social media stuff. Right now the only place it's actually active is on Threads. Threads is the only place where ADHD is actually active. But I do have a TikTok, which is funny. As a 43-year-old, I'm not old enough for Life Alert, but I'm too old for TikTok. But I do have a TikTok for ADHD. I just haven't done anything with it yet. And there's a YouTube, even though I haven't done anything with it yet. I am committed to releasing at least one episode, and then if that goes horribly, I'll say thanks, and if it goes great, I'll keep making more. But be on the lookout for that. And then, my co-host Hugh does Retro Game Club. Retro Game Club is an amazing show. It's techie, it's nerdy, but it's low level enough that it's accessible. Like, they go into like home brews. They go into all that kind of stuff, but it's not. It's something that just an average person can tune into and understand what's going on. I don't know how they bottle that magic, but they do. And one of the things I really respect about Hugh is what you get is the real thing. You know what I mean? Like Hugh on Nerd Noise Radio Channel 2 is identical to Hugh on Retro Game Club. Like, okay. It's the exact same guy.
It's just Hugh.
It's just Hugh.
It's
yeah,
Hugh.
Yeah.
There's no Hugh's a Hugh. It's just one Hugh.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Oh. That needs to be knitted on like a doily or something. But
doily?
Yeah, or whatever,
Yeah. But folks, definitely go check out John's Nerd Noise Radio, as well as ADHD when all that's actually coming out. I need to get on Threads as well to kind of migrate that way. Check it out myself.
Well, when you do, I'll follow you back.
Nice. Most excellent. Yeah. Thank you, John, again for coming on and coming into the shop and sharing these awesome jams.
Oh, it was blast processing. It was a blast processing.
Happy blast processing. Getting pretty silly there, huh, folks? Well, again, I'd like to thank John of Nerd Noise Radio for coming on in and talking about just these really awesome Sega Genesis Mega Drive tracks. And this is only the beginning because, like we mentioned earlier, I'm going to be on Nerd Noise Radio sometime later this year, and we're going to get really digging into just like all these little tiny bits of just the Sega Genesis soundscape. So I'll definitely update you once we have a date set for that. And now I'd like to thank all of those that have stuck around this long for coming into VG Emporium. And if this is your first time in, welcome. And if you'd like to find more VG Emporium, you can find it on Spotify, Google, Apple, Amazon, Audible. But if you'd like to go all the way back to the grand opening, you'll have to go to the main website, vgemporium.wordpress.com, where all the episodes are available. You can also find them on TerraPlayer.com. And then, of course, you can follow VG Emporium on all these different social media, such as Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, which I have been trying my best to keep up on those. Then as for myself, your host, Rage Cage, you can follow me on all those social medias as well, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And, a lot more has been going on there because I am taking part in what's called Weekly Beats. So I write a new song every week, and I'll be sharing a video of the completed song on Sunday after it's released on the main website, weeklybeats.com. I'm also uploading those videos to YouTube because I remembered I had one of those. Now, as to what I have planned for the coming weeks, well, for the week after this episode, I'm not sure yet, but for Valentine's Day, I was able to wrangle in Donatello Valentino for another, Valentine's Day episode. It's been 2 years since he hosted one, and yeah, it's gonna be an experience. If you'd like an idea of what it's going to be like, definitely go back to check out the Valentine's episode of 2022. Honestly, he can be a little much, but I feel like it might be a fun time for y'all. Yeah. So thank you all for coming into VG Emporium, and hope you all decide to come in next week.